Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Have you ever been in a narcissistic relationship where you weren't hoovered? How did that feel? Drop that feeling in the comments. Welcome to this YouTube channel on narcissism. But let's talk about that feeling, what happens that comes when you're not hoovered. Do you ever find yourself wishing you were hoovered? Did you feel bad that you weren't? Let's break this down because some people say, what's wrong with me? It's me. If I want to be hoovered, it's actually very normal. You might be wondering, why would anyone want to be hoovered by a narcissistic person? Lots of reasons. First of all, let's start with the most basic one. Hard as it is to admit it, you still love them. Or you have hope for the relationship, or you still feel very pulled in. I mean, this could be, and very likely is, the lingering trauma bond that feels as magnetic as a magnet. And hoovering would release the painful tension that you feel. You may be ruminating about this person, looking at their social media, wondering what they're doing. You might even be fantasizing about the relationship or coming back together. The idea that they would hoover you and what that might look like would feel like a fantasy, a tension reducer, a second chance. It may also be that loop of the trauma-bonded cycle of breaking up and getting back together, breaking up and getting back together, and that has a life of its own. But the idea of being hoovered for many survivors can feel like a relief like no other, and craving it is normal. Your thinking, wise mind may think that, oh, I know if I get back into this, it's not going to end well, but your somatic, feeling, emotional you doesn't think that far ahead and wants the comfort and the tension reduction that might come from the potential hoover. Second, you want to get a sense of control back. The entire narcissistic relationship can feel like an upside down universe where you feel as though you have lost all sort of sense of reality or control, which I hate to say, you kind of have. The narcissistic person gets to set the agenda for reality, and the only way that relationship worked was by relenting some of that control to them, which they enact more and more every day. So if they were to hoover you, if you launched into love bombing part 2 or 3 or 4, then you may feel that they are chasing you again, trying to win you over. And that can really foster and create for you a sense of this control that you have in the situation, which you didn't have. Remember that anxiety is often about feeling out of control, so that anything that may lead us to feeling more in control feels good. The idea that you can wait before you respond to them, or that they are waiting for you, or that they need you, can give you, at least psychologically, back some of that sense of emotional control that you often lose in the narcissistic relationship. Third, and this matters especially if the narcissistic person left you, you want to be hoovered because you want to stick it to them. You may want them to hoover you so you can say no, so you can take yourself back and perhaps finally feel a sense of closure. Narcissistic breakups, when the narcissistic person initiates them, can feel so dismissive and so abrupt. It can feel as though they're just done with you and they discard you and don't even think about you again. So the idea that they are in fact thinking about you and want to come back is a chance to take back that upper hand, or take it for the first time because you probably never really had it in the relationship, and shut them down, which can feel empowering and seductive. A fourth reason you feel bad about not being hoovered, you still haven't gotten to radical acceptance. You may want to see it, them, the whole relationship again to really be sure that this is what it is. It kind of relates to the first reason, right? That not being hoovered can feel so tough. But it's something more. It's I need to see this more clearly. Now that I understand narcissism, I really need to see what these patterns are about. It's not unusual for people to go back multiple times, and each time you do see it more clearly. But if they don't hoover you, then there's no chance to get that additional look to see if it really is what it is. Radical acceptance is a process, and it's a tough place to land. And data and evidence can help you get there. Hoovering may be a chance to get that. And in the absence of it, you may be stuck in a rumination loop where you wonder, are they really narcissistic or toxic? Or maybe I didn't see it right. Fifth, you see that they left you and got into something else with someone new. And the idea that they may choose you after that is important. So you want to be hoovered. So you can have that sense of being chosen over this other person. Strangely and unfortunately, it can make the narcissistic person look more attractive when they go off with someone else. That kind of makes sense. We want to buy the pair of shoes when someone else wants them too, right? This can also relate to deeper dynamics around triangulation and other similar cycles in families of origin, such as the quest for attention from a parent that played favorites. But there is something about the idea of being chosen when they leave that, the narcissist leaves that person that they left you and went into a new relationship with. It could be that the other person left them, but they're never going to let you know the truth about that. But to be chosen is big. And there's also that idea of fear, belief, that they may have changed for that other person. And you think, I hate that they did that they've changed for them, and you may want back in. In the midst of that emotion, it can be hard to recognize that no, they did not change for that other person. But the idea may be enough to keep you hooked into hoping for the Hoover. When a narcissistic person doesn't Hoover, the wounds of narcissistic abuse, such as not feeling enough, feeling less than, feeling like an afterthought, that can all magnify. Attachment wounds around abandonment can be magnified as well. As I said, most survivors know that being hoovered is ultimately the worst thing that can happen to them, because then you're going to have to re-engage. Sure, there might be a few blissy moments of love bombing, but then you're going to go right back to going through the BS and then the whole devalue and the discarding and the whole mess again. But wanting to be hoovered isn't about rational thought. It is often about anxiety, control, trauma bonding, abandonment, or working through, which are all far more primal processes. The challenge with all of this is that many people who hope to be hoovered feel ashamed. They feel as though they can't talk about it because they're foolish for wanting that, and that they've burned everyone out in their life with the horror stories of their narcissistic relationship. So they certainly cannot talk about wanting to get back into the relationship again. And you may not even be clear on why you want to be back in. It feels confusing within you, but it still feels compelling. But there can be this emptiness that sits with you when you are not hoovered. In fact, some people will say about themselves, maybe I'm the sick one for wanting this unhealthy relationship back. To that I say, not necessarily. These cycles play on old wounds and create confusion that is hard to work through. It's actually crucial to not become isolated when you are in this waiting to be hoovered phase, because having a sounding board that doesn't shame you and can help you see this is normal, it helps. It may help you be less likely to reach out to the narcissistic person and then put them back in the seat of control, domination, and manipulation. It may help you be a little more resistant if the narcissistic person is trying to pull you back in. And it may foster greater self-compassion if you do happen to go back into the narcissistic relationship and it doesn't work out. Lots and lots of people hope for the Hoover. Once upon a time when I was in this situation, I hoped and wished for the Hoover. Many of us don't get it, and most will fall for the Hoover at least once. You aren't broken or codependent or foolish or weak for feeling bad about not being hoovered. The harder work is to look within and think about what is leaving you with that yearning for wanting to be pulled back in, to reflect on your narrative, your hopes, old issues that are being played upon. Sometimes it's less about wanting to be hoovered than it is, what does this teach me? What is this feeling teaching me? There's a lot of clinical stuff that this Hoover desire raises, but above all else, remember, it's expectable. And wanting to be hoovered doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. So when you start thinking like that, it's easy to think, well, I'm the one who's bad, or I'm the one who's wrong, or I'm the one who's off, so maybe this is as good as it gets. This isn't as good as it gets. Healing from narcissistic abuse is about self-compassion and understanding that there's some really primal parts of us, primal drives like wanting to be chosen, and some working through that can often sort of keep us on the hook. And if you do go back in, try and take it slow, be kind to yourself, and don't succumb to the shame that can often leave you more isolated the second, third, or fourth time you get into a narcissistic relationship. Thanks again.